Hi everyone, my name is Rahul Mujahid, and in this video we will discuss the curriculum of SZ 900 examination. So basically, SZ 900 is a kind of a beginner level examination of Microsoft, and before appearing for this examination, you don't need to be a expert in MS Azure, right? And you just need to have a basic knowledge of Microsoft Azure and how it works, basically something like that. What is regions, what is availability zone, and how to configure any monitoring services, how to provide basic security, something like that, right? So we will discuss the curriculum of SZ 900, right? So we have the updated one. If you scroll down, then you will get what's been updated in this particular examination. So let's go on to the updated one. So they have divided this particular examination in 4 to 5 modules, right? For example, first module is simply like what is cloud computing, what is capex, and what is high availability. Some kind of a basic and generic terminologies, right? So in the first one, there is nothing like Azure. I mean, there is something generic things, right? They haven't mentioned Azure, Microsoft Azure in the first module, right? So it is not just limited to MS Azure. You just need to have a basic knowledge of cloud computing. I mean, what is advantages, now what are the disadvantages in cloud computing and the features of cloud computing, something like that. As you can see, we are having the first module as a name of describe cloud computing, that includes 20 to 25% weightage in the complete examination, right? So let's start it. First one, we are having identify the benefits of cloud computing, such as high availability, scalability, elasticity, agility, and disaster recovery and backups. So, just to mention it again, they haven't mentioned anything on Azure, right? It's all about the generic things and very basics of cloud computing, right? Right? What is HA? Right? What are the benefits of configuring HA? Right? What are the benefits of scalability, elasticity, agility, and disaster recovery and backups? Right? So one should know that. Then we are having identify the difference between capex and opex. Right? So capital expenditure and operation expenditure, you must know the exact difference, right? Because obviously, if you are using a cloud computing or if you are using a Microsoft Azure, then you are minimizing your capital expenditure. Instead of purchasing the complete infrastructure, that is the servers and routers, you are using the services of Microsoft Azure, right? So obviously, you must know these terminologies, kind of a basic things. Then we are having described the consumption based model. You should know that, right? So it's a kind of a basic terminologies and basic words that we use in cloud computing, right? So before starting to your Azure journey, you must be aware about these cloud computing concepts, right? So then we are having the cloud deployment models, that is IaaS and PaaS services and SaaS services. So obviously you must know the cloud, these terminologies, right? What does it mean? Infrastructure as a service and platform as a service and software as a service, right? And then we are having describe serverless computing. So you must know that, right? Then we are having discuss the different types of cloud computing. Okay, so you must know the what is public cloud, what is private cloud, and what is hybrid cloud, right? So in section one, there is nothing like an Azure. It's a complete based on the basics of cloud computing, right? It includes the cloud deployment models, right, and the types of cloud, and what is the exact advantages, high availability, scalability, elasticity, and disaster recovery. So these, if you are having these basic knowledge, then you are already covering 20 to 25% of this particular examination, right? So that's it about the first one, I mean the first module. Second one, we are having describe core Azure services. So it the weightage is 15 to 20%, right? So now we will talk about Azure. Describe the core Azure architecture components, right? So again, as I just mentioned, we will just discuss about regions, region pairs, discuss the benefits and uses of availability zone. You should know that what is availability zone, what is region, and what is geography, right? And what is region pairs. So these terminologies you should know before appearing for this examination. What is resource group, what is subscriptions, what is management groups, what is Azure Resource Manager, and what is Azure Resources. So as you must have noticed, we are just, they have just mentioned these things in a hierarchy, right? Because first of all, we are having, first of all, geography. Then in the geography, we are having regions. And then in the regions, we are having availability zones, right? So you should know these terminologies. Then we are having describe core resources available in Azure. So now we are talking about the Azure resources, including IaaS services, including PaaS services, including SaaS services. So first one, we are having describe the benefits and uses of virtual machine, right? Then Azure app services. Then we are having Azure container instance. Then AKS, Azure Kubernetes services, and Windows Virtual Desktop, right? So these are some services which you should know. It doesn't mean that you have to be master of the services. No, you just need to know what does it mean. Let's take an example, a case, right? So what is a case? How we can use that, right? And what is the advantages of using a case on Azure? Right? So these kind of basic knowledge of SEO services you must have before appearing for SE 900 examination. Then we are having described the benefits of uses of virtual network, VPN gateway, virtual network peering, and express route. So again, now it's all about networking. So you must know what is the use of express route, right? What is the use of VPN gateway, right? And in which scenario we have to use express route, in which scenario we have to use the S2S tunnel, right? So these kind of simple things you should know. Then we are having the storage devices, I mean the storage services. Describe the benefits and uses of container blob storage, disk storage, file storage, and storage tiers. So you should know in which scenario you have to use which storage service you have to use, whether it is blob, disk storage, file storage, or storage tiers, right? And don't forget to read about the hot tier, cold tier, and archive tier, right? And lifecycle policies, Azure files, and Azure blob storage, right? And disk storage, Azure queue storage. So these kind of storage services you must know before appearing for the examination. Then we are having describe the benefits and uses of Cosmos DB, Azure SQL database, Azure database for MySQL, Azure database for PostgreSQL, and SQL managed instance. So now we are covering the database offering on Microsoft Azure. So yes, you must know what is RDBMS, what is NoSQL, and which database is follow the method of RDBMS, and which database are NoSQL. So you should know these kind of basic information, right? What kind of database services Azure is providing, right? Then we are having described the benefits and uses of Azure Marketplace. So what is that, right? And what kind of services you can just purchase from Azure Marketplace? Just a basic understanding would work. Okay, so now we have completed the two section. Let's just move on to the third one, that is the describe core solutions and management tools on Azure. So now we have discussed the architecture components, we have discussed the exact services. Right now, let's just move on to the management tools. What kind of management tools we are having? First one is describe the benefits and uses of Internet of Things, IoT Hub, IoT Central, and Azure Sphere, right? Then we are having describe the benefit and uses of Azure Synapse Analytics, HD Insights, and Azure Databricks. Right now, we're talking about the big data tools, right? Then we are having describe the benefits and uses of Azure Machine Learning, cognitive services, and Azure bot services. So yes, it is something related to ML and AI part. Then we are having describe the benefits and uses of serverless computing solution that includes Azure Functions and Logic App. So obviously, you just need to know how Function App works and how Logic App works, and what is the exact difference between Function App and Logic App. That's it. If you don't know how to configure that, then that's completely okay with AC 900 examination, right? You just need to know that which service is serverless, right, and how to configure these services. That's it. Right. I mean, they might give you one kind of a scenario, and you have to select that you just can you use function app just to solve this particular problem, something like that. Okay. Then we are having describe the benefit and uses of Azure DevOps, GitHub Actions, and Azure Dev Test Labs. So yes, we are having a separate portal for the Azure DevOps. You just need to know how it works, right? Um, you don't need to be expert in Azure DevOps just to pass out AZ 900 examination. You just need to know just basics of Azure DevOps, right? What is the exact difference in ACI? What is and AKs? I mean Azure Container Instance and Azure Kubernetes Instance, right? So these kind of basics knowledge you must be having before going for AZ 900 examination. And then we are having describe Azure management tools. So obviously, how to manage the Azure portal? You must be aware about Azure portal, Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI, Cloud Shell, and Azure mobile app, right? So these are something by using these interface you can interact with the Azure. You can interact with Azure portal, right? Then we are having Azure Advisor. What is that? You have to search it out. Basically, it will give you advice like you are using this particular disk and which you are not utilizing, something like that. So yes, you should know these basic basic understanding of these kind of services. Basically they will ask you this is my problem, and just to solve this problem, which service you will use. So maybe option would include as your monitor, security center, advisor, something like that, and you have to choose it, right? Then we are having describe the functionality and uses of Azure Resource Manager. It is the ARM template, right? Then Azure Monitor. So obviously, as the name suggests, we use Azure Monitor just to monitor our infrastructure and just to trigger any alert. So in the form of action items, you can just create one email alert. You can create SMS alert, something like that. And then we are having describe the functionality and uses of Azure Service Health. So yes, you should know that. Then we are having the next module is describe general security and network security features, and that is the fourth one. It includes the weightage of 10 to 15%. Completely it depends on the security. So we are having describe Azure security features. So obviously we are having security center and policy compliance, security alerts, secure score, and resource hygiene. This point is completely dependent on the Azure security center. Then we are having Key Vault, then Azure Sentinel, and then Azure dedicated host. So you should know the security features of Microsoft Azure, right? Including Azure Security Center and Azure Key Vault, just to save your password and your certificates in one dedicated service. So we use Key Vault for that thing. And then we are having Azure Sentinel. So yes, if you want to keep you're logging in one particular workspace and you want to query it, right? So you can use Azure Sentinel as well. You can even configure any alert by using any perf query, right? Or maybe by using any Custo query. So yes, you should know these resources. I mean, these the basic understanding of these security. How Azure security works, and where you can implement any policy on subscription level, on RJ level, on resource level. So these kind of basic understanding you must have before going for the examination. Then we are having network security. First of all, describe the concept of defense in depth. Then describe the functionality and uses of network security group, right? So obviously we can use energy on subnet level, on virtual machine level, right? Just to filter out your traffic. If you want to block and allow some port numbers, some IP addresses, right? So you can use the energy. Then obviously we are having Azure firewall. Then uses of DDoS protection, right? So by default it is protected from any kind of threat, but yes, if you want some further protection, then you can use the DDoS protection as well. It's a feature of security center, right? You just need to enable it. So yes, it's all about security. Now we are having this one. Describe identity governance, privacy, and compliance features. It includes 20 to 25% of the complete examination. Describe core Azure identity services. Right now, we are talking about the MFA and Azure Active Directory, user sign-in groups, and all. So, explain the difference between authentication and authorization. Define Azure Active Directory. Describe the functionality and uses of Azure Active Directory. Right, what kind of plans we are having? I mean, the basics standard P1 and P2, something like that. So you must be aware the basic things about Azure Active Directory. I mean, how what is the exact meanings of MFA, multi-factor authentication? What is the meaning of conditional access, right? So these kind of this kind of configuration you should know about Azure Active Directory. As you can see here, describe the functionality and uses of conditional access, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on. Right. Then we are having describe the Azure governance features. I mean the RBAC, just to if you want to sign a role on a different level to different users. I mean the owner, contributor, and reader or admin access. So for this we use RBAC, role based access control. So you should know that. Then we are having resource locks. If you want to lock any resource by accidental deletion, you can also use resource locks. You should know that. And the tag, the simple features, just to bifurcate your resources, maybe in departments or maybe in different sites. So you can use tags for that. Then again we are having Azure policy. So you can implement a policy on subscription level, RG level, or resource level. It depends on your requirement. So you should know that, just a basic understanding of Azure policy and Azure blueprints. And then we are having described the cloud adoption framework for Azure. Right. So it includes the complete Azure governance features. So you don't need to be expert in this feature. You don't need to know how to configure that. But yes, just a basic understanding what is that and what is the exact use of this particular service. Right. And then we are having describe privacy and compliance resources. That's it. And describe the Microsoft core tenets of security, privacy, and compliance. Describe the purpose of the Microsoft privacy statement, online services terms, OST, and data protection amendment, DPA. So these things you can get it from the Microsoft documentation, right? The moment you just search out anything, I mean, let's say example of online service terms. So you will get one documentation. You can just, it's a kind of a complete theory things, right? So you have to just read it. There's nothing like a configuration. Then we are having trust center as your compliance documentation. So it's all about documentation. You should know what kind of SLA Microsoft is providing, right? So make sure you read that these documentation before appearing for SE examination. Then we are having describe the purpose and Azure sovereign regions, Azure government cloud services, and Azure China cloud services, right? So obviously, if you skip that part, that's okay. But it would. I mean, if you search it out by this name, then hardly it would take around 5 to 10 minutes. So before appearing for this certification, it's good to have these little knowledge, right? But if you skip that, then there won't be an issue because they rarely ask question from this session. I mean, from this section. That's my personal suggestion. So if you skip this, then completely fine. Okay, so I mean, we are having the last module now. Describe as your cost management and service level agreement. So identify factors that can affect cost, resource type, services, location, ingress and egress traffic. So now we are discussing the costing part, right? Because obviously you gonna pay. I mean, monthly, yearly. That's depends on the requirement. So you should know how Azure calculate the costing part. It is not just limited to the users. There is a lot of the factors which affects your costing part. First is resource type, services, your location where you have deployed that service, ingress traffic and egress traffic, right? I mean the incoming traffic and the traffic you are sending, right? So we have multiple factors that can affect the costing of your resources, right? Then identify factors that can reduce cost, reserved instance, reserved capacity, hybrid use benefit, spot pricing, right? Describe the functionality and uses of the pricing calculator and the total cost of ownership TCO calculator. So it's a kind of features of MSSEO just to how you can, so one can calculate the pricing before deploying any kind of resources, right? Then we are having described the functionality and uses of Azure cost management. So you can just monitor your costing part, how much is the amount you have spent, and how much amount you are is remaining in your subscription. Then we are having describe the purpose of an Azure Service Level Agreement, the SLA of Microsoft Services. Identify actions that can impact on SLA, that is the availability zone. Describe the service lifecycle in Azure, public preview and general availability. What does it mean? You should know these simple terminologies, right? So yes, you should know these five modules, right? So just to mention it again, before going for SE 900 examination, you don't need to be an expert in Azure services. You know how to configure that, and like the deployment and everything. If you know the basics, and you just aware about the theory, and how Azure works, that just a simple overview of Azure services, so you can easily crack the examination, right? So I think there is a five of modules, right, which includes around 10 to 15, or maybe 15 to 20, and the first one was 2025 as well, right? So yes, if you cover these points, then you will easily correct this particular certification. So that's it for now. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that, right? And you can just comment any topic on which where you want my next video. So thank you so much.